guest house may have been run-down patchwork of a hotel, but the bed was comfortable. I slept great. I was concerned about having a roommate, which would make it difficult to sleep. Hopefully Paul had a good night's sleep too. I was awakened downstairs, getting coffee early. We'd be leaving before breakfast was served. Søren told us it was important that we get to the airport early so we had a good chance of catching a plane to Lukla. That way we could start our Everest Basecamp Trek later that day. Ramechhap airport was packed. Bad weather in Lukla had prevented anyone from flying up there for 3 days. The number of trekking outfits represented by these bags was staggering. Søren doggedly pursued our boarding passes. He was constantly talking to the airport personnel. At 10 a.m. we had our boarding passes in hand, but that was no guarantee we'd get on a flight. Every airplane landing or taking off was cause for celebration. At 1:30 p.m. we were on the tarmac waiting to board. Finally, we were loading up just before 2 p.m. The flight to Lukla was only 15 minutes long, but it felt a lot longer. The Lukla airport has the reputation for being the most dangerous in the world. The airport is at 9,300 feet elevation, and the runway is only 1,700 feet long. Since it opened in 1971, there's been 10 crashes and 50 deaths, about one a year. One of those crashes was due to brake failure. The plane slammed right into the hillside. The runway wasn't even paved until 2001. In recent years, rules have been put in place to prevent crashes and deaths. Planes can only fly during hours of daylight and only in good weather. Because of the rules, 50% of all afternoon flights are canceled. Our flight was the last one allowed to land that day. Right after we landed, it started to pour. We had lunch at the Buddha Lodge around 2:30. It was our first meal of the day. While we ate, the storm passed. We met our porters, Singa, Hari, and Sonam. Sonam was Søren's nephew. Around 4 p.m. we were hiking away from the airport in relatively good weather. The airport is called Tenzing Hillary Airport after Tenzing Norgay and Edmund Hillary, who were the first to summit Mount Everest. It was due to the efforts of these two men that the airport was built at all. Hillary wanted to build the airport on nearby farmland that was flat. The farmers were unwilling to sell their land, so that is why the runway is at a 12-degree angle. That means airplanes land going uphill and take off going downhill. But I guess that's better than the alternative. We walked right through the bustling town of Lukla on our way up the mountain. It was full of shops and restaurants. Our hike to Phakding was only 5 miles, but it was a memorable 5 miles. It was like walking through a Himalayan theme park. It seemed too beautiful, too idyllic to be real. We stayed at the first lodge in Phakding, the CU Lodge. The dining hall, the entire guest house really, was more beautiful, nicer than any guest house I'd stayed at in the entire Annapurna circuit. Paul had forgotten to bring a towel, so after my shower I went up the road to the closest shop to find one. Everything in Phakding was so fancy and pristine, like the beginning of a horror movie. I was in the dark, in what I thought was an empty lot, just appreciating the Himalayan village vibe, when I heard growling right next to me. When I flipped on my light, I discovered it was just some dogs playing. Phew, no horror movie after all. Søren let us sleep a half hour later than Raj did on the Annapurna circuit. We got going at 8:30. We'd follow the Dudh-Kasi River to the Hillary Bridge, where we'd cross to ascend to Namche Bazaar. At Tok Tok, we crossed a crystal clear creek. At the bottom, I saw a beautifully painted stone. It was the first time I'd seen anything like that in Nepal. I was told it was holy. We were not going fast. About 3 hours and 3 miles into an 8-hour and 6-mile day, we officially entered the Sagarmatha National Park. Sagarmatha is Nepali for Mother of Heaven. It is the name of the mountain we call Everest. We rested here a while for Suren to wait in line and grab our passes. There was a three-dimensional model of the national park to look at while we waited. It was fun to try to trace our path to the base camp. After about a 20-minute break, we were on our way again. From there, it was a short walk to the bridge crossing to Jorsale, where we had lunch. I noticed the geocache was nearby, so while my food order was filled, I traversed guest house backyards, stone walls, and a yak encounter to find the geocache. The highlight of the day was the Hillary suspension bridges. Named after Edmund Hillary, the original bridge, which is the lower one, was built in 1996. It was damaged in 2015 and now is used by a bungee jumping company. We stopped for a long rest in the shadow of the bridges. We watched the multitudes cross, their heads bobbing just above the waving prayer flags. When we left the rest area, Sonam was on a mission, heading up the very steep trail to get to the bridge as fast as he could. I tried to keep up. When we got to the bridge, I found out why. He wanted to see a bungee jumper leap from the platform. Because we were so far ahead of everyone else, we were able to wait at the viewing area for a good long time. This improved our odds of watching a thrill seeker spring into the abyss. We were not disappointed. The hike up the bridge to Namche was steep. When we passed through the village portal, it was all worth it. The sense of entering a theme park came back. Namche Bazaar is like the Himalayan Disneyland Main Street. It was marvelous walking through town, but we just kept walking and walking up. It was the opposite of the night before. Instead of staying at the first guest house in the village, it seemed we were going to stay at the last. I was really impressed by the dining hall. Phakding. We were really but that was nothing compared to the Namche Bazaar guest house dining hall. After settling in the guest house, I felt like exploring. There was an Adventure Lab geocache stop all the way down at the village portal. So, I got to see everything twice. Seems like volleyball is very popular in Nepal. It looks like even the large guest houses have to be entirely built by hand. As the light faded, the village took on a mythic quality. Like a siren, I was summoned to the Happy Yak. The owner, operator, and lead musician was rocking out. I could risk having a couple of Sherpa craft beers. The next day was just an acclimatization day.